So we hired a whole team out. We were doing like 75 lives a month. And then the algorithm shifts and like all of a sudden overnight, it just doesn't work anymore. I think the hard part today is finding the pockets of opportunity where you pick the time to spend that hopefully there's longevity to it, because it's not necessarily fun when you lean heavy into something and then things change and you have to completely pivot.
Welcome back to another episode of Chew on This. Season 4 today, we have Kevin joining us, who is a serial entrepreneur. He's a co-founder of Glamnetic, INH, and has his hands even in different investments and has been a huge builder in the D2C community. Kevin, thank you so much for taking time out to join us on the Chew on This pod. For the few people who don't know you, why don't you give us a little bit of background on your journey and how you got your hands in so many different things.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. By the way, you guys have the most legit Chew on This podcast studio. You got the lights, the camera. This is legit. So
appreciate that.
I'm impressed. I guess to give you guys a quick background, so grew up in North Carolina, moved to LA when I was 21, which was a while ago. I actually started in the entertainment side of the business. So I started in the mailroom at a talent agency called WME, which is one of the largest talent agencies in the world. And I don't know if you guys ever saw the show Entourage, but it's kind of like investment banking where you just get your ass kicked, except in investment banking, you make money, and the talent business, you don't make any. Then you kind of work your way up as an assistant. I was mostly working on the talent side with, kind of like the young Hollywood actors, like the kids on Glee, some of the kids from Twilight. And then I was really early there. I was interested in the influencer ecosystem. And at the time, WME had no one at the agency focused on influencers. So I thought, this is a really interesting opportunity. Kind of cut to, ended up leaving WME around 11 years ago. I started my own company, and at the time it had two sides. One was managing YouTubers, digital talent. The other was I was kind of the go-between where I was representing Silicon Valley companies on all their entertainment partnerships, because both sides didn't really know how to talk to each other. And then kind of how I got here today, I had angel invested in a beauty company called Beautycon around 10 years ago, which was like the Super Bowl meets Coachella of beauty. I showed up, I'm like, wow, the beauty space is incredible. And I wanted to start building beauty brands. And so I met Sharon and Jordan, my two co-founders on INH Hair there. They were the first two employees at ColourPop. Called them up one day, convinced them to leave. We started a hair brand, and then a year later, I met Anne, who's my co-founder on Glamnetic, which is a press-on nail and lash brand. And we launched that, and that was around five and a half years ago. And so, it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, just the ease of how you talked about starting multiple brands and now both of them being multi-8-figure brands. Give me a little bit of color and dive right into about like the balance and even just the intention of saying, I'm already starting one thing. Now I have an opportunity to maybe start Glamnetic. How does that decision process come about, and how do you kind of spend your time initially in the early years of both?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like pre even starting INH and Glamnetic, I actually wanted to build brands with influencers. I felt like there was kind of an unfair advantage and like the marketing arbitrage off of starting brands with influencers, but then I just felt like it was really too tough to put all your eggs in one basket with one. And so then I kind of came up with the idea of why don't I start a few different brands, and it was kind of out of honestly naiveness at the time, right? Obviously, like as you guys get into this, and I think we're all kind of similar and we have multiple things. It's definitely never easy. And with INH, it was very intentional that I wanted to start a brand, and I met Sharon and Jordan. With Glamnetic, it honestly, like it was a little bit of luck. Like Anne, who's my co-founder at Glamnetic, showed up at an INH photo shoot because she was kind of a micro influencer at the time, and she was trying to learn how photo shoots worked. And I heard her talking on the side about developing these lashes, and I was like, whoa, she seems really smart. Seems like there's a really interesting market here, and so then it was kind of very serendipitous, and we partnered up from there. Oh. And so look, if I could go back, maybe I would have spaced out the timing of like when we started the different brands, because there was a lot to start at once. But yeah, we made it work, and it definitely requires an element of focus and time management, having a few different brands.
I know some of your co-founders, right? I know they also have a decent sized following now. Did they have a decent sized following back then, and that kind of also led to the launch of the brands?
Yeah, they all had like decent sized followings. I think they're all around like 100,000 or 120 or so. So they're not like huge influencers, but I think what I was really interested in with all of them was they were very like influential to the audiences that they held, but they were also really amazing at building community and shooting content. And so obviously the name of the game with owning a consumer business today is being able to, the output of content is really important. And I also feel like the three of them did an amazing job becoming a very familiar face on social and with the community. And so in a way, I think that's a lot more influential than sometimes a much larger influencer who maybe, or celebrity who might not kind of put in all the effort that they do.
When you look back at the world of influencer and creators, you were probably like right around the time when it started to become a thing where creators were creating brands and getting involved with brands. And now fast forward like post iOS days and Meta days where people are like, damn, you need an organic presence. You need some sort of maybe creator, influencer, etc. I'd love to like know both sides of the world now, where one, it was like you started in a way where you probably didn't have to depend on Meta right out of the gate.
Yep.
And now today you probably have to almost lean in on the creator world and the influencer world. How have those two worlds shifted, but still having the same core?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit of when we started both brands is we didn't go like hard on Meta right away. I mean, Glamnetic went pretty quickly after, because Glamnetic started in the middle of 2019, and then obviously when COVID hit in 2020, we kind of figured out by then the arbitrage that was happening on Meta and really scaled. And then on I&H, we started at the end of 2018, and so I think both brands at least had a little bit of time to kind of build the basics of the community through organic. But then I think even then, right, like I think everyone needs scale through ads. But I think in order to run a successful consumer brand today, you can't have either or. You have to have all of the above, right? So I think all of us, and probably a lot of the other founders we know, you kind of have to have influencer, retention, acquisition, content. The whole machine has to be running in order for it to be successful.
Yep.
And so I think it definitely helped that we had sort of like the community aspect down, and we knew the influencer world, and then we were able to parlay that into like scaling on Meta. But it wasn't like either or.
I feel like our mentality has completely shifted like over the last maybe 12 months, where we were so focused on just Meta, right? It's like everybody's 90% of your spend is on Meta. And I think as time goes on, and I think as the platform kind of matures and with the privacy issues and concerns, Meta is not going to drive that true top of funnel awareness for brands anymore. And it's going to act as more of an amplifier for that middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel, right? So if you can fuel the fire with what we're doing is also influencers, right? We're really trying to nail that process and work with some key people. But if you can nail your top of funnel traffic and not be relying on Meta, there's a more solidified base to the brand,
Yep. Right?
And so when you look at brands like, especially you guys, and then even brands like Ridge, right? When, working with, the influencers that they do, it's one of those things where you can build around the brand, right? And you have this like awareness, this general awareness, and you can use the algorithm that Meta has created and the conversion aspects to it to really like, all right, when people are ready to buy, it's going to serve you the ad at the right time and get you to buy.
Yep.
So I think that's something that we've been really trying to like nail down and figure out what our ecosystem looks like outside of just the ad account.
Well, I think unfortunately and fortunately, you have to kind of scale the unscalable now to succeed. And so I think fortunately for all of us, like we're willing to put in the work and do that. And yeah, it did used to be a lot easier, 3 years ago, and you could just throw up some Meta ads and scale. But it's a lot of just like ground game now, right?
Yeah.
Like it is hard ground game, and there's no easy path. But for the brands that do it, obviously it really pays off.
Well, how are you guys approaching influencer? Right. I mean, obviously founders like you said, the face of the brand. They have, their own communities, but outside of that, how do you guys approach, building out an army?
Yeah, I think it's taken different paths over the years. I think if you asked me this question 3 years ago, we were doing a lot of larger paid partnerships, particularly on Glamnetic. And then I think when the algorithm started to shift heavier into Reels getting more engagement, and like stories got less engagement, but then the influencer rates stayed, the same. And we get really good rates. I'm friends with all the managers, so that's also a competitive advantage. We started to see the return on like paid partnerships go down. And so then we shifted way heavier in the last 24 months to just like really heavy, I know you guys do a lot of this as well, like heavy organic gifting, and like having a roster and a stable of content creators that we're consistently working with over time. But now I think we're actually, thinking about kind of shifting back a little bit again and taking another crack on the
Let's see if the rates have stabilized.
I think we're going to take a little bit more of a crack on the paid side. We also have a lot more retail distribution now, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in on Glamnetic, we're in Ulta, we're in Sephora, we're in Ulta Target, a couple other retailers. And so I think that top of funnel can get distributed out across more channels than just D2C. And so it's gonna be interesting to see that. And then I honestly think one place we had not invested a ton of time in initially was on TikTok Shop. So we're putting a big initiative there now. I think, I don't know if I'd say we like dropped the ball on it. I think we, in the beginning, didn't feel like you didn't have access to the customer data. You weren't getting emails.
Right.
It obviously is like great for lower AOV type products. But now we're going to start leaning in there. So I think, it's like everything, right? Like what we did a year ago on influencer isn't working now. What we do a year from now, it's going to be completely different. And so you kind of got to bob and weave with what's happening in the space.
That's right.
With the paid stuff, right? Because we are also considering going back that route, right? Because we've done a ton of seeding, and you do have like maybe out of 1,000, a couple that hit, but you really just want to go for the heavy hitters that are known to work, right? What do you guys look for, and what dictates a successful campaign in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously look at the basics of like, do they have a large U.S. audience? Because most of our presence is here. We're really digging into like their engagement stats and making sure they line up with our actual audience. And then I think another key is like, can they actually educate and explain in a way that is convincing to a consumer to potentially buy? I think a lot of it just starts with the basics, but then we just dig a little bit deeper on if we feel like their content is actually going to resonate with the audience that we're going after.
Mm-hmm. And then like post campaign, what kind of metrics are you looking at?
We'll like give them, I think the hard thing now, right, with like Reels and like TikTok coming more into play, if you're not driving to shop, is that like, I feel like discount codes used to work a lot better to track. That's a lot harder now. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of judging like, site traffic and obviously some top of funnel metrics, and then like our how did you hear about us survey on, where are you hearing about us from? So we're kind of looking at all those things together to figure out if it's successful.
Yeah. And then obviously like on a blended approach, like do you see an uptake on Meta? Does efficiency become better?
Yeah.
I think all those things are certain things that people forget about, right? It's like, okay, well, for example, we ran a campaign yesterday testing out meme accounts on Instagram. Obviously the direct like link in bio, site visits, discount code usage, like is tough. And when you look at it, it's like the return is barely there. But did we have a lift on our ad account, right? Yep. Did efficiency become better at some point? Is there, post-purchase survey response like, hey, we saw you on Instagram, right? So I think brands that are trying to go for this like top of funnel approach and think it's going to generate the same return as like your Meta ads, it's not.
Yeah.
And you have to have different thresholds for what you find or deem successful.
I agree. Have you guys done a lot of collabs on the influencer side?
I've done a few.
Yeah, I think the few we've done have been like we've done a couple of like B-list celebs that were, I think, kind of hit or miss. Mm-hmm. But then we've had like a couple that have been these like Facebook influencers that have an incredible community. Yeah. Not the biggest, maybe they have 800,000 followers or something around that range, and you realize like they have like a cult-like community.
Yeah.
And then the tricky part there is if you go too deep in with them, now their community becomes yours.
Yep.
And you kind of have to also make sure you kind of separate, because now it's like the identity of your company can almost become the identity of that community. And I think there was instances where we went a bit too deep, and we kind of had to pull ourselves out and be like, hey, we're one, ultra reliant on this, and two, we are not really understanding who our customer base is.
Yeah,
you know.
Makes sense.
So that's been interesting.
We went really, talk about just like shifts in platforms. We went really deep 3 years ago on Facebook Lives. We hired a whole team out. We were doing like 75 lives a month.
Wow, that's
and
insane.
then the algorithm shifts, and like all of a sudden overnight, it just doesn't work anymore. And we were actually getting really solid traction there.
Was that with different creators that would lead a live?
Yeah, different creators that would lead lives, and
Yeah.
then we'd run through their pages, sometimes through ours. Sometimes we put spend behind it.
I feel like we've even shared one of the Glamnetics or INH will probably post.
I think that's
like
how
it.
we met, because we were talking about it. I was like, "How are you guys doing this? Like, I want to like, where are you even finding these people?" 'Cause
Yeah,
couldn't
we
figure it
went
out.
really deep there, and then it just obviously like just everything at some point might stop working, and
Yeah.
we're dependent on the platforms, and so then we shifted out of that, and you kind of move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think the hard part today is finding the pockets of opportunity where you pick the time to spend that hopefully there's longevity to it, because it's not necessarily fun when you lean heavy into something, you get
That's
it
right.
down, and then things change and you have to completely pivot.
I want to jump into a little bit on like team structure, how you operate and whatnot, because first of all, I don't think I personally have met anyone who's running two brands but with two sets of different founders, right? I think we come across a lot of people who have like, I work on 2-3 brands or incubating this, that. How's that work? Do you have just two totally separate teams? Is there a lot of like unfair advantage where you get to compare who's doing what and like share a lot, or do you fairly keep it, separate? Give me a little bit of that, and then how you spend your time.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way we have it set up is, so I have Combo Ventures, which is essentially like my holdco. And at Combo, what we did is we stacked all of the ops, finance, back office, supply chain, HR. So there's around 20 to 25 people that sit at Combo that are all the back office, and we shared service that across the brands based on, how much time they're spending on each brand. So if it's 60-40 or 40, 50-50, it kind of depends on the role. And then we co-share that OpEx. So there's a lot of cost savings that come into account by having a shared operational infrastructure. But then what was really important to me, that in the beginning I was like, look, the team, the lifeblood of the business, which is the founders, so Anne on Glamnetic and then Sharon and Jordan on INH, they have to be 100% on the brand. And then all of the marketing roles, creative content, product development, customer service, those are all employees at the brand level. And so they're only focused on those brands. And then what that does is it gives the brands optionalities long-term on what we want to do. It's fine to commingle the ops in the back office. I think that's something that, is a easier thing to undo. But in my mind, right, for those particular brands, if you start commingling those things, it gets a lot harder to uncommingle them over time.
Yeah.
And then even on the marketing side, right, like our VP of marketing on Glamnetic, she's amazing. I mean, I couldn't imagine, Glamnetic is like a full-time job times 3, right? So trying to kind of like split that is really tough. And then we do get a lot of shared learnings though. And that's where, even though they're separate teams, they're sharing key learnings. We get economies of scale on all of our software vendors, our 3PL, our 3PLs with whoever our SaaS partners are. So there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then in terms of your day-to-day now, how are you splitting your time, whether it's on a week-to-week, day-by-day basis?
I think it's really like on a week-to-week basis. And I think certain weeks I'm deeper on Glamnetic, certain weeks I'm deeper on INH. Obviously, there's problems that come up in a business. I have to go really deep, really fast. And then we were kind of talking a little bit before the pod, but I was like, man, when there's problems on both businesses at the same time, that's where it gets really tough. But I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm like I guess like a SWAT team, right? I dive in and I jump in on and go really deep on a specific department or a focus that we're working on one brand. And once it's set up, I pop back out. And then I'm kind of like on to the next one. I don't know if that would work for everyone. It works for me. I think you could for sure make the argument that if all my time was dedicated to one, we could be doing better on an individual basis. But that's not the way we set it up. And I think this is what works for us and for me. Yeah.
Do you keep the entities separate in terms of like marketing collabs, or do you kind of cross it over at some point?
We'll share like content creators and influencers, right? So there's, if there's influencers working on one brand, we'll kind of cross share if there's content creators, we can also, double up on that. In terms of collaboration, so like each brand does the collab separately. So like Glamnetic has done, Harry Potter, Hello Kitty. INH has done Barbie, also Hello Kitty, but it was a completely separate collab. And so those are pretty distinct and separate. And then same thing with like, we get reached out to by other synergistic brands for like giveaways all the time. Right. Well, if one comes in for Glam, we share it with INH. If one comes for INH, we share it with Glam. And so it makes it a little bit easier on the teams.
That's awesome.
With kind of like the inbound happening there. And
do you guys have, you have communities set up for both, right?
Yeah, we have Facebook groups for both. One, the INH is called INH Babes. Glamnetic is the Glam Fam. And we've really had those since day one. And that's where I think Anne and then Sharon and Jordan really shine. Is like they are in there every single day,
that's
engaging.
Awesome.
And people, consumers really look up to them, which is awesome. We, do polls. We do like for INH right now, it's Halloween. For like Halloween coming up, we'll do like a weekly contest of like, rocking your hair a certain way with your Halloween outfit and just like fun stuff like that that keeps the community engaged.
Right.
We tried that with our coffee brand because we did have a collagen coffee, right, for Avi. And we're like, you know what? Let's see if we can kind of see if it sells in the coffee brand, and it did okay. Yeah. Right. I think there's maybe a little bit of a mismatch in terms of audiences, but I think from what you guys have done and the brands and the audience, and there is some cohesion there too.
For sure. I think the thing with community too is community building is a long-term game. Yeah. And I think, by the way, I think all of us in the last couple of years have been kind of humbled by just like the iOS, decline. And I think everyone was on the ride like back in 2020. We're going, we're scaling to the moon. And I think everyone's still doing really well, obviously. But I think the one thing you can't shortcut is time. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that you get with the benefit of time is like when you do things like community building, that is a compounding effort that keeps getting stronger and stronger over time. And that does develop like a unique value prop and a moat that other brands just won't have if you put that effort in.
No, 100%. I'm also curious on like product development, innovation, and how much that fuels retention for you guys. When you look at like Glamnetic, right? Innovative product, and then convenience, and then you also have again community and really good branding. What's kind of like the piece that's kept the customers coming back? What's the exciting piece outside of and community piece? Is it product? Is it the innovation piece? And how are you guys thinking of the next few years?
Yeah. I mean, I think product development and innovation by itself could be its own whole podcast, because there's just so much to kind of unpack and talk about there. I think along the way we made a lot of mistakes on product too. Like when I look back, now I feel like a couple years in, we have a pretty clear vision of like where we want to go, who the customer is, how we need to double down on our current categories and then kind of expand adjacently and what makes sense, and then take a lens and take a step back and go, okay, does this product work for D2C only? Does it work for D2C and retail? Does it work for D2C retail and Amazon? And so we kind of take a more macro lens on like how we develop. But for us, what's particularly in Glamnetic, we are a very heavy nail business now. And part of that is there's just more retail distribution for nails. So like in Ulta, for example, with lashes, which we love lashes, it's a great category, we have like a strip on an end cap, right, with maybe 6 SKUs. With nails, we have an entire end cap of like 40 SKUs. Wow. And then with nails, there's lots of newness that you can layer in. And so for us, we think about we don't want to be a trend brand. So that is, we don't want to be in the fashion business. A lot of our SKUs are core SKUs from 2 years ago, which is great because you don't want to be churning out new SKUs all the time. Right. But we'll introduce trend and newness to tackle the retention audience and like make sure we're bringing them newness. But now I think we've gotten a lot smarter about how we think about incrementally tapping into new TAM in the category by new designs or by new lengths of the nails. And we kind of have a whole system now on like how we evaluate whether we think this is going to be incremental or whether we think it's going to be cannibalistic, because there'll always be maybe particularly with like a category like nails, there could be some degree of cannibalization, but you don't want to be trading out dollars from one nail to the other. Right. You want incrementality. So I think that's how we could talk about this all day on how do you innovate on product and all the key learnings, but that's how we're thinking about it at this point in time.
How much of a role does community play in product development and that type of things?
I'd say we're pretty active there. Like we're obviously taking all the feedback in from whether it's the Facebook group, whether it's, we have a very vocal community on social and on email and our surveys and all that. But we do a lot of polling with our current audience in Facebook groups. We'll definitely do smaller, kind of virtual like hangs where Ann will talk to community members and like really get their feedback. And so it's one piece to the puzzle. It's not the whole piece to the puzzle though. I think you want to listen to your community, but you also, I think, you have to also kind of look at the data side and is this something that retail is going to want? Like there's other elements besides just building exactly what the community wants, but it's very important.
Chew on This is sponsored by
Biggest D2C event is coming back to San Diego this September. We're talking about Commerce Roundtable San Diego. Last year, it was the place to be. It's 2 days filled with killer keynotes, live podcasts, interactive workshops, and what we love about this event is the fact that it's not your typical stuffy corporate nonsense. The vibes are high, the content was incredible, and the food was actually great. We go to a lot of events, we know it's hard to nail that. This year, they're bringing it bigger and better with an awesome venue right on the San Diego Bay. The lineup is getting stacked with experts from Yeezy, Podium, Milk Bar, Nude, Common Thread Collective, and the operators who are returning for round 2. Commerce Roundtable San Diego is the can't miss event of the year, so get your tickets now before they sell out. Last year, there was a 200-person waitlist and the FOMO was real. We've got a special offer for our listeners. Register at commerceroundtable.com and get 20% off with code OBVI20. We'll see you there.
Now, let's get back to the episode. Touch on the retail piece a little bit now. How long have you guys been in Ulta, Sephora, and did that business cause any cannibalization? And how did you guys kind of maneuver through that?
Yeah, we've been in Ulta for probably 3.5 years now. Started with lashes, and then we moved in the year after with nails.
Okay.
We didn't really see any cannibalization. I think, and again, maybe it depends on the category. I think for beauty, what was great was we were spending so many dollars on D2C, and I'm sure you guys see the same thing, is when you drop a retail presence in play, you're gonna see like an uplift there. We also will merchandise a little bit differently where we have some nails are kind of like exclusive to Ulta, and we'll bring newness in there. And then we'll have some things that are exclusive to D2C. So I'm a big believer that it kind of like lifts all areas of the business. Like we didn't really see too much cannibalization there.
Did you do that, I guess, exclusive SKUs on different channels like to start? Or did that kind of become something that happened after?
Lashes was less, there was just less SKUs. So it was more of honestly the same, pretty similar assortment. When I think back, it was pretty similar. With nails, we had more flexibility, right? And so that opened up the flexibility to, have a really great partnership with our retailers where there can be exclusivity there.
I'm curious on when you look at some of the things, whether it's on the INH or Glamnetic side, are there certain things that you're doing that's unconventional right now, or certain things that are working that you maybe didn't think would work, little hacks or little things that you're doing that is different from, hey, let's run Facebook ads and, at a certain type of cost, but just curious on either brand, if there's some stuff that you gotta point out.
Yeah, this is less like marketing related. I mean, I recruit with voice memo. I'm a big voice memo guy. I will literally get on LinkedIn and I will hit people with voice memos and like recruit all day.
Really?
And that's been like a big.
So like you'll slide in someone's DM with a voice note.
I will slide in someone's DM with a voice note, and it's actually super impactful because it stands out. You can convey context. We did this early on with the brands. So again, if you're a brand at scale, it's hard for this to work. But if anyone's out there and like they're just starting out, we turned our DMs into an entire prospecting funnel. So if someone followed us, we'd immediately hit them with a DM. I'd have, Ann or Sharon and Jordan would jump in and actually DM the customers like, hey, I wanted to reach out. This is Sharon from INH. Like, we really appreciate the follow. Let us know if you have any questions. And then once they respond, we would turn that into like FOMO with a discount code where we give them a special code. It expires in 24 hours. And so like, that's like the, scaling the unscalable. And if you're a small brand doing, a couple $100,000 a year, that actually will move the needle for you. Again, that doesn't necessarily scale as you get a lot bigger, but that also helped building the community because people are like, holy shit, the founder just voice memo me. That's like insane.
It's huge.
What if there's a way to automate this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with like AI, there's a lot more, a lot more things I think starting to come out. What's really interesting we've been working on, and I actually we work very closely with Roman over at Gorgias. You guys use Gorgias?
Yep.
Cool. So he is convinced that 70% of tickets will be automated by AI by the end of the year. We're at 20% now.
We're like 27%.
Yeah. So I think like it's gonna be really interesting to see how we can free up time of the team to then use that team time to dive deeper into the community side. And so I don't know if that's anything that's like special that we're doing, but I think it's exciting that I told him though, I was like, look, I want to see the automation, but I want to see the NPS score stay the same, right? Because like if your NPS drops and the customer experience drops, but you're automating more, that's not a win. It's got to stay the same. So those are kind of like the two metrics they've been tasked with. And they're very focused on this. So I'm really excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, the team's great. Anna, Milagros, and the whole team.
Yeah.
They just, they're so dialed in on that piece.
Oh yeah, I saw you at Shop Talk. So we did a Glamnetic X Gorgias
yes.
pop-up
Incredible booth.
And for them, I think they wanted to make a booth interesting where it's not just selling customer service software. And so we were like doing lashes and nails at the booth, and
really
the names lined up, Glam X Gorgias. It was a cool kind of co-branded. Even it was a B2B co-branded moment, but in the end, those are our consumers there as well.
Yeah,
so I think another thing we're thinking more about, it is tough to scale, is like, what do in-person events look like? Like we have a collaboration coming up with a big IP property that I can't say which one yet in the fall, and we're gonna do kind of a cool experiential activation around that, and maybe we'll pull in a couple other brands or two. So there is.
That's cool.
There is value in doing in-person events.
Yeah.
No, so when you guys are thinking about in-person events, like what do you, again, I think on the strategic level or even like analyzing if something is working or not, right? What are certain things that you guys would look for out of or what would define a successful, live event for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple layers. One layer you have to look at, right, is how much does it cost and how much team time does it take? So when we're so when we're evaluating, do we do this or not? Cost, team time, relative like outcome if we do this. Let's say it's an influencer event where we're collabing with a IP property and we're taking influencers to a movie premiere, just making that up, right? Probably low time lift. We're not doing a big build out. We're bringing influencers and we're leveraging maybe something they couldn't get otherwise to bring them there. And if influencers are getting a scale and talking about it, that's a big win. That's different though than like an in-person, just pure consumer event where it's honestly a little bit hard. It's hard to measure this, right? I think like why we go back and forth on like how many of these do we do is it's not necessarily one of those things that like, sure, we can see how many people are talking about us on social, but if 100 consumers talk about us on social, is that really the measurement? Or is it, okay, those 100 people are gonna tell 5 other of their friends about us, and it's kind of the network effect of word of mouth, and it's just impossible to it's like when I go on planes, I give flight attendants free nails. And why do I do that? Because they fly all around the country, they sit next to other flight attendants that they keep meeting, and they all look at each other's nails. Or hostesses, we went to Mastro's last night for a dinner. Yeah. I gave the hostesses at Mastro's free nails, right? And so it's impossible to know if those things scale, but we do those things.
I mean, it's that whole, even out of home, right? Some of these things that we all spend money on. It's I think like it's been formally just been chalked up to brand awareness, but it's more than that now. It's more than awareness. It's also just brand activation, right? It's like you're activating the product into people's hands, which is as close to the experience you want when a customer purchases.
We've done some out of home on Glamnetic. During COVID, when all the billboard real estate got cheap, I went and found remnant billboards. It was right in front of Catch in West Hollywood in LA when Catch was like popping. And I blocked it for the whole year. So I got the billboard for the whole year, and it was like, I don't know, $5K a month for prime real estate. And I had a Glamnetic billboard there for an entire year. And so in my mind, okay, everyone coming out of Catch is seeing a Glamnetic billboard. It's $5K. It's hard to measure, but I know if it's working if I get texts from people, right? Or we did like we did the American Airlines airport terminal in LAX, and the crowd that traffics that terminal, LA, SF, New York, and again, it's hard to judge it, but when I kind of base it a little bit off of like how many people are hitting me up saying they saw the billboard.
Yeah, I mean it's fair, right? That's the indicator we have, right?
I'm always scared to do those things. Yeah. It's like I get hit up from like, oh, like even these airlines will be like, oh, like we'll feature you in the pocket pamphlet, and it's like, yeah, I know how many people are taking flights every day. Is it worth it? I have no idea, and I'm scared to try it.
And I think you gotta pick and choose. And so like for us, relative to the budget, right? I was like, all right, is the $5K worth it? Is this prime real estate? Let's take a shot at it. I think there's some value here, but would I go and drop, $250K on an outdoor campaign? I don't think we're just not there yet. I think you need to be like a $400 or $500 million brand to start doing like heavy outdoor.
Yeah. So you shared some of the things you're doing and some of the things that are winning and whatnot, but over these years, can you share some of the challenges, whether it's recent or some of the big like moments that you had and how you kind of got through them or how you're currently going through them?
We've obviously learned a lot along the way. I think getting the right people in the right seats is super important. Yeah. So we scaled really quick, and so then making sure we were hiring for the right people at the right time was important. And I think we made maybe some, not too many mistakes, but made some mistakes there. I think for us, one thing I'm really focused on is I love how you guys are in person. We didn't set the company up to be in person though. And so it's always been kind of a challenge, at least for me, being virtual and just like pulling the team together in the same direction. And so I think a personal maybe mistake of mine that I've hopefully gotten better at over the years is like aligning the team on exactly where we're going and giving clear direction on like where everyone needs to row. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's more kind of like just personal CEO self-development things that I've had to work on, and I think continually work on. On the product side, we've launched things that in hindsight we're like, what the fuck are we doing? Why did we launch this? Like it just doesn't make, it didn't, I think we maybe got caught up we can sell anything. Yep. And then you're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. How do you layer this in to talk about this? There's no opportunity in retail. Yeah. There's not, I think the things that have really worked, it's because we've innovated and made a great product. And, if we're not really coming with a unique angle on something, that's not going to win in the market, right? So we've gotten a lot better on like product decisions. And look, bootstrapping, when you make poor decisions that have financial costs, those suck. Like things on the site that something's broken and someone goes in and I think we had like a $400,000 mistake like 3 years ago where there was like a free mystery item and then we had someone order like 10,000. It was like one of those like, oh shit, this really was a critical error. But look, you learn from it and you move forward.
What do you think was our biggest?
The slushy water. What is it?
The H2O. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it was the stupidest thing we ever launched.
We tried to make these like collagen waters.
Yeah.
It tasted horrific.
We were at our prime though of like thinking we can sell, and like if you slap a label on, we'll sell it. Like we were on this like ride, and we were on it. We were at our best year at that time.
So these are all mistakes that we've made, but I think for anyone that's just like, one of the best things about being a founder is you're sort of naive and you just feel like you know what you're doing and you're just going to push forward. But I also think you have to be a really active listener. And like sometimes I'll talk to founders and I'm trying to give them my advice and like the mistakes I've made, but it's almost like they don't hear it until it happens to them. Yeah. And I'm like, just listen, just take a step back. And like, you don't know everything. Yeah. I still try to take that strategy myself. I'm like, I don't know everything. I need to like, really actively listen. And I think that's super important because it'll save you a lot of time and mistakes.
Let's talk TikTok and like just the ever rise of platforms and platform lines. How much of your business is coming from TikTok, and what's your thoughts on it? And especially being in this beauty category, which is a lot of our listeners, would love to get like depth in like how you're looking at that platform, or if you're not, why not, and some color over there.
Yeah, we've always done a lot organically on TikTok, and we've done a lot on gifting. That like we have a ton of just influencers that talk about us organically on TikTok, and that's been great for top of funnel. And that shows up in our How Did You Hear About Us survey, because like when you look at the amount we spend on TikTok, kind of maybe relative to like the survey results, just it's showing that it's coming from an organic capacity. I think we are now probably going to start leaning a little bit more in there, particularly into shop. I think that there was definitely concern for a while about TikTok not giving access to like the emails and the data, and like, well, if you're going to spend here and then spend towards shop, but you're not getting the emails, then you pay all this money to acquire a customer, and then it's hard to remarket to them. I think TikTok's starting to develop out more, remarketing capabilities, and so I think between now and the end of the year, we're going to start leaning in there a lot more. But then who the fuck knows? It might get banned.
Right.
I don't think it's getting banned, but it's just like another one of those things where we're gonna start putting more effort in. It's also interesting, right? Because there's now these brands that, again, people find pockets of opportunity in different pockets of time, like the BK Beauty guy. I don't know him, but he's done a great job. Yeah. Or like this guy Hudson who runs Comfort Clothing. Man, they're like the #1 apparel brand on TikTok
really?
Shop.
BK is #1 too, right? In his
category?
I think
in beauty. Yeah, they've done an incredible job, and they built off a completely different platform than we all built off of. So there's more than one way to build a brand.
Right.
I think for the TikTok Shop focus brands, now they have to. It's actually a lot like TikTokers that are influencers. All the TikTokers that were influencers, their #1 goal at the time was, I need to move off TikTok into YouTube or other platforms that can monetize better. Right. It's the same thing now for these TikTok Shop brands. They hit it on TikTok Shop. They've got an unfair advantage there. How do they now parlay this into actual like having a D2C presence, which sometimes is tough because their AOV is lower on TikTok, which doesn't work for D2C. Or how do they quickly make that a brand and not just a TikTok Shop brand, and then move that into retail?
Right.
And so it's definitely a great launching pad for these brands, but they, still have to figure out what to do post that.
That's right.
I find myself like always bringing up that one collagen brand that sold like 500,000 units. I still don't know what the brand is called. Like, it's just one of those things where you just see it over and over and over again. You're like, oh, there's that collagen that I saw on TikTok, that TikTok collagen.
Which I think that's awesome for whoever that guy is, because he's probably just printing cash.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have any brand value long term. It's going to be so hard for that. I know what brand. I can't even name the brand because it's not a brand, right? And so for them to then just turn that into something that actually has brand equity and long-term value is going to be really hard. So I would look at that more as just like print cash on the side, and it's more, I guess it's the next iteration of drop shipping, right? It's like,
I'm like so back and forth on it, and maybe it's because I'm salty we haven't figured it out, but like I feel like every time I see somebody promoting, let's just say that collagen, right? And it could be like even, a section of like males, right? So I'll hop into the live and like ask questions about, oh, what is collagen? What does type 5 collagen do? They have no idea. They're literally on TikTok Shop going live just to like cash in, right? And so to me, I just feel like, I feel like consumers are
you can't be getting a quality customer.
Like, you can't be, right? But then when I'm just like, all right, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. How are people being sold by this? Right. And then it has, in my head, it has this negative connotation, but then also on the other side of it, as being a marketer, it's like, I'm trying to onboard 1,000 creators to start promoting Avi, and I don't care who they are. Right. Yeah. So I get both sides, but to your point, I think just that brand value may not kind of show through as much. And then it's like, okay, well, you use this brand of collagen. What's stopping them from going somewhere else, like immediately?
Right. Right. For sure.
One question I do have is the competitive landscape for whether it's INH or even Glamnetic. How do you guys differentiate in that area, right? Because it's like, at least from, and again, this is just my lack of knowledge in the space, but like in supplements, right, a lot of the differentiation comes from results. Hey, our product either tastes better, works better, has better before and afters and results. Whereas, at least from where I see it, like a lash is a lash, and like, yeah, maybe it's more fuller and this and that, but like how it feels like there's very small degrees of separation in the competitive landscape there, which means brand has to really prevail. Is that true? What's really that competitive landscape look like?
Good point. On the surface, yes, it looks to the eye like there's not a lot of differences, but I think even if you take like nails, for example, right, or even our hair, like it's custom molds, like the wearability, the quality, the details of design is a lot different, and I think the end consumer ultimately sees that. So I think that there is real differentiation in the product for sure. With like hair, like we have we have both human and synthetic hair, but on the synthetic side, it's a really high quality synthetic. It is a lot different than what you would buy on Amazon, like a lot. There's certainly a customer that can buy that. That's totally cool, but you can really tell a quality difference. But then, yeah, I think you need that. But then brand in the end also wins out, right? So in a perfect world, you can combine having a better functional, wearable product, particularly in beauty, and combine that with brand.
Makes complete sense.
Fair. I mean, it's the answer we give too, right? It's like how many different collagens are out there, right? You have Vital Proteins, which is the top dog. You go to Amazon, you can pick up a bottle for $15. But what you really buy into with Obvi is one, obviously formula and flavors, but the community behind that too, right? So you're not just buying a supplement, you're buying into a group that will help motivate you, keep you accountable, and answer any questions you really have, on this new journey of yours,
You want someone to feel like they're excited to tag you on Instagram and rep the brand. Or like I was at WWD Beauty, which is a big beauty conference in Miami 2 weeks ago, and I had the Glamnetic name tag on. And this girl comes up to me and she's like, "Oh my God, you're Glamnetic?" And then she puts her hands out, and she worked at WD. She puts her hands out and she's rocking our nails. Wow. And like when you get that reaction, you're like, all right, that's really cool. And it's really hard to, it's hard to get people to buy your product, but it's even harder to get them to like rep it and talk about it. And so that's where I think you start to like really separate and see differentiation. And look, as a brand owner, you're obviously biased towards your brand. And so I try to take a little bit of an unbiased view and not just hype myself up. Right. But when I see things like that, I'm like, okay, cool. I know we're making some of the right moves here. We need to continue to do a lot better on other things, but on some of the moves we're doing the right thing.
What's next for Kevin? So you've clearly obsessed with women-related products. So I was going to ask where you're going with that. I'm curious with what's next. I know you've got your hands also in the SaaS space with LiveCom.
Yep.
Obviously building 2 brands as well. You're investing where you can. What do the next 5-10 years look like for you?
Yeah, so I guess in the immediate next year, so I think to what you just mentioned, so in addition to INH and Glamnetic, which I run day to day, I incubated a SaaS business called LiveCom, which really started with shoppable video and taking that TikTok video experience and putting it on site, and that's how consumers are consuming content now. And so we also have live streaming, so we have a partnership with Tapcart where we have an API that integrates shoppable video and live streaming in the app. But I have a great founder, Max, who runs that day to day. I'm really there for strategy, advice, bringing in brands. I'm really excited about the path for that. But other than INH and Glamnetic and running those and kind of incubating LiveCom, I'm really focused on that right now. 5 to 10 years, I think my long-term goal is to have 2 sides to the business. One is to buy beauty brands that maybe get stuck at 10 million and hopefully scale them to 50 to 100 and I think we kind of have the infrastructure, the marketing playbook to do that. And the other is I actually want to buy businesses and buy and hold forever. So I think there's something to be said about the person that starts a landscaping business that does 8 million in revenue and 3 million in EBITDA a year, and that 3 million in EBITDA is true cash flow. And there's a lot of small businesses out there that I think, I think with brands, right? I go back and forth. It would be amazing to hold them forever, but then the reality is a lot of them at scale will go on to live another day somewhere else. With these other types of businesses, it's a really cool cash flowing portfolio that you can build that's completely different from consumer branding. And so directionally, that's where I'm thinking about, but there's
Very
a lot just to focus on in the moment right now and not get distracted.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know we talked about quite a lot of things, right? Influencer community, kind of figuring out TikTok shop, right? What's one thing that you want viewers and listeners to kind of take away from this episode and implement in their business right now?
I think it's just like stay humble and stay focused and constantly curious. Like I think all of us, the reason, because of how quickly things change, you just have to be on it, man. If you're not on it, you're not gonna like actually scale your brand. And so I think just being constantly inquisitive and curious is I think one of the number one traits of being an entrepreneur. And I don't think there's any one tactical thing I could say that's like do this and you're gonna scale your brand, but just at a very high level, like if you're not constantly curious, you're dead in the water. And stay humble.
I like that.
Because if not, you will get humbled.
That's a bar.
I love that.
Chew on that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.